Hello, the story I want to tell you all today takes place in Gautama Prefecture, Japan. Gautama Prefecture is a province located in the southeastern part of Japan, within the greater Tokyo metropolitan area. In the southeastern part of Gautama Prefecture, there's a city called Mist, about 20 kilometers from Tokyo, with an area of 30,000 square kilometers, and that's where our story happens today. The main character of the story is Junk, born on January 18th, 1971. At the time the story occurred, she was only 17 years old and a student at Yahoo Miami High School in Gautama Prefecture. She had a cheerful personality and a sweet appearance, making her very well liked by other students at school. Her father was a business director at a canned food factory, while her mother was a homemaker. Besides her parents, she also had an older brother and a younger brother. The family's financial situation wasn't well off. The economy depended solely on her father's income. To lighten the burden on her father, Junk decided to work after graduating from high school. Outside of school hours, she worked as a sales clerk at a household goods store or packed items at a plastic factory to help support the family. As her high school graduation neared, she applied for an interview at a company and brilliantly passed the selection process. After graduating, she could start working at the company. It was like a new journey in her life. However, no one could have imagined that one day, on her way home from her part-time job, she would encounter a demon, and what happened afterward would leave anyone who heard it heartbroken. So what happened that day? Next, we'll rewind time and go back to November 25th, 1988. November 25th, 1988. It was a beautiful Friday, as usual. After school, Junk went to her part-time job at a plastics factory. At 8:20 p.m., Junk finished her work and began heading home. She hopped on her bike and pedaled toward her house. The road had only a few streetlights, and there were hardly any pedestrians around. Suddenly, a strange man on a motorcycle sped up from behind and kicked her hard, causing both her and her bike to roll onto the ground. Before she could react, the man on the motorcycle quickly fled. As she was trying to get up, a young man came to help her and said that the guy earlier was from the underworld. He was stalking her. He added that the man might come back to harm her, that was very dangerous, and that he could escort her home to keep her safe. Junk, having just fallen, was still dizzy. She didn't understand what was happening, but she felt the young man in front of her was a good person, so she pushed her bike and limped after him. After walking for a while, they reached a secluded spot with no one around. He stopped and told her that he, too, was a member of a local gang, and the man on the motorcycle earlier was his accomplice. His name was Hiroshima Man, 18 years old, and he was now out of school, staying at home. He then attacked her and said, "If you agree to spend the night with me, I'll let you go. If not, you'll die." In the end, out of sheer fear, Junk agreed to his request. At 9:50 p.m., Hiroshima took her to a nearby hotel and assaulted her. However, afterward, he didn't keep his promise to let her go home. Instead, a more wicked idea sprouted in his mind. He arranged for 3 other accomplices to gather at a park. The 3 were Honda, Shinintu, and Such Wannabe, the same guy on a motorcycle who had knocked Junk down. At 3 a.m., the 3 young men were waiting in a car in the park. Not long after, Hiroshima brought Junk to meet them. The 4 of them searched her bag and found a diary with her home address inside. The 4 threatened that they go to her house and kill her entire family if she dared to escape. Junk was extremely frightened, thinking they might actually do it, so she had to obediently follow their orders. After some discussion, the group of 4 decided to take her to Shindig's house. His house was in the base area of Apache Ward, Tokyo. Shindig's house was a 2-story building with an electric gate outside, a place where he often hid and brought friends over. Over the phone, Junk's parents didn't notice anything unusual. They thought their daughter was staying at a friend's house, so they didn't report it to the police. 2 days later, on November 28th, the 4 of them felt bored and wanted something more fun, so they called 2 more friends to the house to join the fun. The noise from the room upstairs was so loud that it caught the attention of Shindig's father, who had just returned from trip. When asked, Shin said that Junk was his new girlfriend and told him not to bother them. After that, all 6 men took turns assaulting her. Too scared to resist, Junk tried to endure it, which made the group of 6 very satisfied. Over the next few days, junk was continuously used as their source of amusement. One day, when Shindig's mother went upstairs to clean the room, she accidentally saw junk there. She knew her son had brought girls home before, but she didn't expect this girl to still be there. So, she told Junk to go home quickly. However, a few days later, she still saw Junk upstairs, so she told her to go home again, but then left it alone, not questioning her son further. It was December by then, and the weather outside was very cold. The 4 young men frequently gathered at Shindig's house to hang out. They even forced Junk to take off her clothes and dance to music. They even made her stand outside on the 2nd floor balcony with nothing on, which caused her to pass out from the cold. In the days that followed, Junk endured their outrageous demands, which were beyond description. To keep her parents from calling the police, Hiroshima occasionally made her call home so they wouldn't worry. They saw how obedient and compliant she was, so they tormented her even more. When they got tired, one of the 4 would stay behind to look after Junk while the others went out to get food, only to return and continue their fun with her. Hiroshima even used a camera to record those moments and force Junk to watch. One day, Hiroshima told her that her brother had suddenly died in a traffic accident. Seeing her sadness, he found it amusing and then said he was just kidding. The group kept using similar words to torment her heart. During that time, one member of the group intended to find a way to let her go, but he was caught and warned by the others. After that, the group continued having fun with her. By then, Junk couldn't bear it anymore and cried out for help. Shindig's parents downstairs heard the noise, but didn't intervene because they were afraid of the group of young men. On December 7th, 1988, the 13th day of her captivity, the 6 men passed out after staying up late. Over that time, Junk had endured immense suffering, both mentally and physically, but she still mustered the strength to put on clothes and ran downstairs to the phone to call the police. But before she could fully explain the situation to the police, Hiroshima was right behind her. Furious at her actions, he immediately hung up the phone and dragged her back to the 2nd floor. Then he called the operator back and said it was just a prank between friends. Next, he ran upstairs, poured gasoline on her legs, and set them on fire as punishment. As a result, her legs were burned and she couldn't walk. Seeing this, the others followed suit and burned other parts of her body. The wounds on Junk's body began to fester and smell bad because they weren't treated on time. Shindig's parents noticed something was wrong at home, but fearing the anger of the young men, they turned a blind eye. Shindig's older brother, who also lived on the 2nd floor, knew about Junk's situation too, but out of fear, he didn't dare report it to the police. He only occasionally brought her milk, bread, and other food. She couldn't move due to burns in many places, so she ended up lying on the floor and could only relieve herself right there. Some members of the group of 6 treated that room like a pigsty, and what Junk had just done made them extremely annoyed. They even forced her to eat her own waste. Gradually, the food they gave her dwindled. Some days, she got only a carton of milk or a few pieces of bread. Other days, she went hungry. Hiroshima even beat her for peeing on the floor and dirtying her feet. They kept attacking her face, causing it to swell and deform, and they took great pleasure in it. By then, Junk was on the brink of death. To them, she was just a toy to satisfy their desires, but now she was filthy, smelly, and unable to meet their needs. However, they had no intention of letting her go, as that would mean getting caught by the police. After that, an even more sinister plan took shape in their minds. On the 41st day of captivity, at 6:30 a.m., Hiroshima arrived at Shindig's house with an angry look on his face. He'd lost over 100,000 yen gambling the night before and was feeling frustrated. Seeing Junk lying on the dirty, stinking floor, he took out his anger on her. By then, Junk's consciousness was hazy. She could barely make sound. Her feet couldn't move because they were rotting, so she could only be manipulated by others. After attacking her, Hiroshima still didn't feel satisfied. He then grabbed a barbell with a 1.7 kilogram iron rod attached, and they took turns smashing it into her stomach for 2 hours. The next morning, January 5th, they discovered Junk had passed away. They had prepared for such a situation. Hiroshima had gotten a truck from a previous workplace and stolen some sand, cement, bricks, and a metal drum measuring 60 centimeters in diameter and 90 centimeters tall from a nearby construction supply store in sight. First, they wrapped Junk in a blanket and put her in a suitcase. Then they drove the suitcase to an empty lot and placed her in the drum. Hiroshima, being very superstitious, believed Junk might turn into a ghost and come back to haunt him. So he added a VHS tape to the drum. Inside was a Japanese drama called Dragonfly, Junko's favorite TV show. During her captivity, Junko often mentioned that show. After that, the group mixed cement and poured it into the drum until it was full, then sealed it tight with tape. At 8 p.m., the group drove to Tokyo Bay, intending to dump the drum into the sea. But due to traffic jams and a police checkpoint approaching, they changed direction and headed to Koto Ward's coastal park near Tokyo Bay. They dumped the drum in a grassy area by the roadside to destroy evidence. They cleaned the truck thoroughly and returned to Shinji's house, destroying anything related to Junko. On January 23, 1989, 18 days after Junko's death, Hiroshi and Yasushi were arrested by the police for assaulting another girl. At first, they thought the police had found Junko's body, so they confessed some details about her. Only later did they clarify that they were arrested for a different case. Both then admitted their crimes in the case under investigation and were detained at a juvenile facility in Tokyo's Nerima Ward. Based on their statements, the police grew suspicious and believed they might be linked to another crime, so they searched their residences. On March 29, 1989, 2 months after Junko's death, 2 investigators arrived at Hiroshi's house and found some women's underwear, leading them to suspect he was involved in other incidents. Right after, the police conducted separate interrogations of Hiroshi and Yasushi. During the interrogation, Hiroshi assumed Yasushi had told them about Junko's death, so he directly confessed and recounted the entire story. The next day, March 30th, 1989, the case was officially investigated based on the location Hiroshi provided. The police found the drum. Junko was discovered in a state of decomposition, unrecognizable. In the end, the police confirmed her identity through fingerprint comparison. The autopsy revealed that her face was disfigured. Nearly all her teeth were broken. Her chest had multiple steel needles. Her intestines were ruptured. Her hair had been torn out, leaving only scalp. Her uterus was destroyed by foreign objects, and some glass shards were found inside her. She had been pregnant. Using the location of the call Junko had made to her parents, the police tracked down Shinji's house and successfully arrested the group of young men, including Shinji's brother. As a result, the group of 7 faced trial. Among the initial 4, Hiroshi was the main culprit. They were all between 16 and 18 years old. This was an extremely serious case of juvenile crime. The police then dug deeper into each person's background and learned that the suspect Hiroshi Miyano, 18, had a father who was a stockbroker and a mother who was a piano teacher. His family was relatively well off. Because his parents were busy with work, he was raised by his grandmother from a young age. It wasn't until he graduated elementary school that Hiroshi returned to live with his parents. Since he wasn't cared for much as a child, his relationship with his parents was poor. To make up for it, his parents overlooked his mistakes and tried their best to meet his material and financial needs. In high school, he enrolled in the school's judo program and learned some fighting skills, which he often used to bully other classmates. In March 1988, Hiroshi dropped out of high school and got involved with bad elements in society. After seeing this, his family demanded he stay away from those people and made him work at a construction materials company. But he completely ignored their arrangements. During a prolonged argument, he even hit his mother. When his father found out, he immediately kicked him out of the house. After that, he gathered a group of delinquent dropouts and formed an organization called the Extreme Youth Syndicate. He became the gang's leader and lived off extortion and robbery. The suspect, Yasushi Watanabe, 17, was Hiroshi's underling. His father was a transport worker, and his mother worked at a hotel. His parents divorced when he was in 3rd grade, and he lived with his mother afterward. In high school, he met Hiroshi, quickly dropped out, and joined the organization Hiroshi had founded. The suspect, Shinji Minato, 16, had a father who was an administrative director at a hospital and a mother who was a nurse. At home, his parents frequently argued. After each fight, his father would take out his anger on Shinji and his older brother. Growing up in such an environment made him increasingly irritable, and he often attacked classmates. One day, his older brother had his motorcycle stolen, and to get it back, Shinji asked Hiroshi for help. The two gradually became close friends. Sometimes, to avoid getting beaten by his father, he brought Hiroshi's group of friends over to retaliate. Shinji's father was very annoyed with that group, but didn't dare do anything about them. Over time, his father just let Shinji be, and his mother, feeling helpless, didn't intervene much either. Yasushi Watanabe, 17, had parents who divorced when he was young. He lived with his mother and sister. His mother worked at a beauty salon and was often very busy. After entering junior high, Hiroshi pursued Yasushi's sister, and that's how the two got to know each other. The acts they committed should have been judged by adult standards. This was a massive and utterly horrific crime, unprecedented in Japanese history. The defendant's motive was to toy with their victim. She had endured abuse that normal people couldn't even imagine. At trial, the four defendants admitted their guilt, but their defense lawyers argued that they were juveniles and had no intention of killing Junko. They only kept attacking her, not deliberately trying to murder her. On May 21st, 1990, after 10 months of trial, the case concluded. Hiroshi was sentenced to 17 years in prison. Yasushi was sentenced to 5 to 10 years. Shinji was sentenced to 4 to 6 years. Jonda was sentenced to 3 to 4 years, and 3 of the remaining 7 accomplices were detained in a juvenile reform facility. The prosecution rejected the verdict, deeming it too lenient, and appealed to the Tokyo High Court. On July 12, 1990, a year later, the Tokyo High Court ruled. Except for Yasushi, whose sentence stayed the same, the other sentences increased. Hiroshi to 20 years, Shinji to 5 to 9 years, and Jonda to 5 to 7 years. Still, the prosecution remained dissatisfied. The Tokyo High Court explained that, under Japanese law at the time, the perpetrators were juveniles and thus eligible for leniency. After sentencing, the parents of the 4 juvenile defendants hoped they and their children could kneel and apologize to Junko's family, seeking a chance for rehabilitation, but this was refused. By civil court order, Hiroshi's mother sold their house for 50 million yen, about 8.2 billion VND at today's rates, to compensate Junko's family. Through a lawyer, Yasushi's father sent a large portion of his income to a bank account managed by the lawyer. Shinji's parents, aware of the incident but inactive, weren't initially sued, but Junko's family, dissatisfied, filed a civil lawsuit against them, and they too had to pay compensation. In 1995, Jonda was released after serving his sentence. Bullied often in prison, he developed a fear of people and became a timid recluse who stayed home. In 1997, Shinji was freed after his sentence and left Misato with his family, but couldn't find work. In August 2018, he was arrested again for assault and sentenced to 18 months in prison. In 1999, Yasushi was released, changed his name to Johnny Saku, and married soon after, but in 2003, he was arrested again for another crime and got 4 years. In 2009, Hiroshi was paroled, renamed himself Yokoyama Hiroshi, but was arrested again in 2013 for fraud. This case is among the most horrific in Japan's juvenile crime history. The 4 perpetrators, all minors at the time, continued to reoffend after release, despite swearing before sentencing to never commit crimes again. When the case surfaced, Japanese society erupted in legal debates about juvenile crime. Some argued the minimum age of criminal responsibility should be lowered. This case shows juvenile delinquency is deeply tied to family upbringing. Had those behaviors been stopped in time, perhaps such a tragedy could have been avoided. Decades later, it remains one of Japan's most haunting criminal cases. Today's video ends here. See you in the next ones. Goodbye.